is go meet and be in a potentially romantic situation with as many women as you possibly can. Go out and date a whole lot of women, because that way you start realizing the commonalities between how women think as opposed to how people think in general. And I know that kind of sounds deep, but a lot of guys automatically assume women are a certain way. They're all a certain way, and they're all very different than us guys. But when you start meeting women, you start realizing that people are very different, but the common threads that make women women, you can start putting your finger on them, and that what I call chick whispering, of course, that kind of concept of learning how to understand women, despite us guys having been told our whole life that it's pretty much impossible and women are a total enigma. Once you start learning more about what women are actually like, you can start building skill towards relating with them and trusting how your masculinity is going to affect a woman. That was what I pretty much started working through in my college years, that I would go on dates with girls and women and have a good time. And I started learning a little bit more about what I liked, what I didn't like from women, but I still made so many mistakes, you know. And, you know, that's part of what it's all about. You live and you learn, right?
I have two questions for you. The first one is, what would you say to a guy who's fairly young, we'll say in his early 20s, maybe is struggling with some social intelligence, and he's in a long-term relationship with a girl, maybe been dating her for 2 or 3 years, not sure if he wants to marry her. Would you tell him that he should break up and date as many women as possible, or would you encourage him to stick out that relationship where he's being faithful and monogamous with a girl in an exclusive relationship?
Well, you know, it's funny because I was having this exact conversation with the guy I'm coaching today. Men think of themselves as men for not quitting. They think it's a universally masculine trait to just, you know, stick it out no matter how tough it gets. And if you quit, you know, that's an insult to your maleness. Well, there's a difference between quitting and being logical. And one of the ways I think guys get themselves into being pee-whipped in today's culture, when they really thought, it kind of happens without them even figuring it out, it happened, is they go, look, I've got this woman and I'm going to make it work. You know, we're showing there's all these red flags, you know, she's not treating me with a whole lot of respect, but, you know, I'm not going to let this woman pwn me like this. I'm going to stand up, I'm going to become a man, and I'm going to make sure this works, by God. When in reality, the woman was no good for him. He really wasn't much attracted to her anymore, and they should have broken up months ago. I'm sure you see this. I see it all the time.
100%.
Yeah. But because the guy said, I'm no quitter, he ends up settling. I think a guy can really not be completely sure whether he's settling or not until he dates a lot of women, knows what he wants from a woman, and has dated enough women to recognize, even if he wants a monogamous relationship, which isn't for everybody, and which is a sliding scale depending on where they are in their life, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think once a guy realizes that that's what he wants, he has to have the wherewithal to know he's making a right choice, and that only comes from experience. But I would tell that guy who's in that situation, look, evaluate what it is you want. Don't stay in a relationship because you're afraid of the drama of breaking up either, because most women can handle that sort of thing much better than we give credit for. Usually the woman knows things are just as bad as you think they are, even if she's got her head in the sand. So that all is very, very important. But yeah, I see a lot of guys sticking things out when they shouldn't be.
All right, I got one more question to you before we have to go to a commercial break. Earlier in this interview, you talked about the myths, the idea that men are constantly taught, you'll never understand women, don't even try.
Yeah.
And I know that I had to face demystifying women in this regard. So I'd like to hear from you. What was it that made you say, you know what, there is a way to understand women, I just have to find it? What was that moment for you where you said, that answer of I'll never understand them is just not acceptable?
I think when I started seeing common threads from dating a lot of women, and you know, what I'm talking about here happened years later. when I was dating again in my 30s. I got smart and said, wait a second, I'm not just going to believe the memes that I've been told my whole life. The standard mantras of, here's the way dating is, here's the way, women are. I'm going to figure out what the truth is, because Hollywood may not be telling me the truth. And, of course, just like very, very similar, you and I have a similar experience, Frank, that we went from a place where we were getting mediocre at best success with women. And, it's probably useful here to say that I regressed in my confidence and my skill with women due to a very difficult marriage, which is well documented out elsewhere.
Uh-huh.
So I was coming from a place similar to you where I want to get better at this. And did a lot of studying, immersed myself in the studying of how to get better with women, but also how to understand women. In my mind, it was like, look, if I want to learn how to play basketball, I need to learn the rules of the game. I can't just learn I can't learn how to dribble between my legs and behind my back and expect to know how to play basketball.
Uh-huh.
And that outlook, when I got in front of women, I was wanting to figure out what women are really like. And I came to this stunning conclusion that it's not that difficult to understand them. Now, you won't always fully understand them, but there are certain things that women will do predictably, just like there's certain things men will do predictably.
Uh-huh.
Just like men don't like to quit and men don't like change much. Women will not respond if they have a feeling of insecurity about who you are and what you're about. Online, for example. If there's anything creepy about your online profile, women are going to go, well, you know what, I'm not going to compromise myself. When a woman looks at an online profile, she wants to see your pictures look like the guy who wrote the profile in her mind. And that the first email you wrote the woman, is kind of like the movie trailer to the movie that is your profile. Everything matches up. You know what I mean? And see, when you get in front of a woman and you start looking at the way they operate and you say, well, gee, when I drove like a maniac, she wasn't impressed and got really nervous. But when I drove like a normal guy, she let me kiss her at the end of the date. You start putting two and two together. Like, if you start saying to a woman, I'm not going to really pressure her to kiss me or do anything physical. I'm just going to pretend I'm going to be completely comfortable with the fact that nothing physical is going to happen at the end of this date. All of a sudden, she practically hijacked the first kiss because she trusts you. Whereas, if you're trying to get your paws all over her, they generally get skittish. I started figuring all this stuff out. And when you start putting two and two together, it's like, women want you to make them feel safe. And it's not like you need to beat up all these guys who are trying to, to rob you and pillage you all night. It's not about being a thug. It's about helping that woman feel secure in your presence, like everything will be okay. The way I put it is, you got to be able to hug a woman, hold her, and tell her everything's going to be okay, and have her believe you. You're talking about the ultimate way to, quote-unquote, escalate Kino. There you go.
All right. You're listening to Frank Talks Pleasures and Lifestyles. We'll be back right after this.
Frank Talks is sponsored in part by Everything Out of Her Mouth is a Test, a man's guide to the emotional needs of women. Ladies, do you want the man in your life to understand you on your level? Do you want your man to be able to listen to and address all of your emotional needs? Show him how much you really want your relationship to be the best it can be. Everything Out of Her Mouth is a Test makes the perfect gift. The book, written by a man, for men, is endorsed by every woman that reads it. This book is a guide for men to understand exactly what a woman means when she speaks. Is that worth changing your life forever? Buy this book at franktalks.com now.
From Loser to Seducer is the story of Frank B. Kermit. This book marks the triumph of a nice guy over most of his inner demons. This includes going from being a loser to managing 5 lovers at the same time, his first Valentine's date with 2 women at the same time, and getting back the one that got away. Want to learn how you can change your life? Buy this book at Frank.